Hello, dear friends. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but don't be alarmed. These things must happen, but the end is yet to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All this at the beginning of birth pains. Matthew 24:6-8. Opinion piece. Prophetic calendar. Financial storm. Mystery Babylon. Key events and dates. Gold is divine money. Transition starts. Prophecies and revelations. Red Sea miracle in May. Fall of the seven mountains. Exposure of darkness in June. The greatest awakening in history. Dragon family says enough is enough. Let's start. The divine timeline for the coming financial storm is the subject of a video by Bo Polney, broadcast on May 20th. This focuses on new prophecies and revelations related to impending financial, political, and spiritual changes, interpreted through biblical timelines and current events. Bo Polney prophesies that the current global financial system, known as Mystery Babylon, is about to collapse, citing Revelation 17:5. This system is associated with the dark side of the force. The fall of this system is described not at the end of the world, but as the end of its era of control. The financial collapse has two phases: a miraculous deliverance in May, which would be the current wave of global pacification, and an exposure of darkness in June. The collapse of Mystery Babylon signifies the imminent fall of the global financial system and the power structures of the dark side. Seven mountains. The shaking of the seven mountains signifies that major social spheres will experience upheavals this year. This prophecy includes the statement that there are seven major mountains or spheres of society that will begin to fall or experience upheaval within this year, starting from the identified prophetic window: church, family, financial system, education, government, entertainment, and media. The episode describes a sequence of upcoming events: the collapse of the financial system, a shift in governmental power, a Red Sea miracle in May, implying a dramatic deliverance or breakthrough, and a period of further exposure of darkness at the June summer solstice. Polney calculates prophetic chronologies using biblical cycles and gold price fluctuations. He identifies March C 2023 as a significant date that aligns with the biblical story of Esther and the concept of deliverance. He also thinks the Turkish earthquake of February 6, 2023 as a precursor event occurring 30 days before this pivotal date. Golden indicator. Gold as a prophetic indicator means that Polney uses the value of gold and its cycles to interpret the divine chronology of world events. He shares the revelation that gold is divine money that indicates the timeline and serves as protection against economic turbulence and as a tool for calculating prophetic calendars. He recounts the testimony of someone who paid for a house with gold after its value tripled, using this as evidence of gold's protective role for believers. He further asserts that tracing gold cycles and biblical timelines, referencing Daniel's 7-year cycles, helps discern the timing of divine intervention in world affairs. Melania Trump, as a prophetic sign, implies that her increased media presence signals a divine shift in government power. Polney describes a vision in which Melania appears more frequently in the media. Melania's increased visibility is presented as an indicator of the beginning of this transition. He interprets it as a prophetic sign that God is about to transfer power to the current government leaders. Sabotage prevented. The White Hats have prevented a dark side attack, according to media Greer. On the morning of May 19, 2025, it was launched a coordinated attack against the US electrical grid and national communications infrastructure. Their goal was to stop the launch of the QFS quantum financial system, disrupt the EBS emergency broadcast system, and plunge the US into darkness just as the curtain was being drawn back on the greatest awakening in history. This wasn't a simulation. It was a war fought by a failing cabal, desperate to maintain its illusion of control. They knew what was coming next, and that they couldn't stop it. At 2:33 a.m., cyber intelligence units intercepted high-level communications between dark side operatives. Curiously, these communications were embedded in key tech stubs, Silicon Valley, Langley, and offshore nodes across the Atlantic linked to NGOs. These communications included explicit directives to detonate remote EMP devices, hack transformer substations, and redirect civilian power control in Texas, Florida, and California, because that's where the QFS infrastructure nodes are strongest. That's where GSRS testing protocols are active, and that's where citizens are awakening the fastest. But the response was immediate. Within minutes of intercepting the plans, the Space Force activated Project Black Shield, a classified override system designed precisely for this moment. Simultaneously, Navy SEALs and Delta Force units were deployed to key sites, many of which had been tracked for months using quantum surveillance technology. More than 300 arrests were made in less than 45 hours. It was not a drill. The command centers at Fort Bragg, deep underground, activated Red Protocol, marking the first time since 2020 that special contingency overlays were applied, not for population control, but for internal counterinsurgency warfare, because the real enemy came from within. NORAD began deploying high-altitude drones over key infrastructure. Reconnaissance satellites equipped with state-of-the-art optical surveillance connected to QFS quantum artificial intelligence systems began capturing and storing every movement, every keystroke, and every sabotage attempt in real time. These operations were not reactive, but preemptive. The quantum financial system remains untouched, as the QFS was not breached. Despite large-scale digital attacks against control nodes in Wyoming, South Dakota, and unregistered facilities in Arizona, the White Hat cyber defense technology developed under Zircon project held firm. The QFS uses quantum network encryption, filtering out behavioral anomalies with artificial intelligence and biometric access control. The entire system is not on the same network used by the public, and it is encrypted by light, often scalar and impossible to penetrate without Level 7 access codes linked to DNA markers. The cabal threw everything they had at it, but they were unable to crack a single firewall. Final disclosure. While all this is happening, the president remains in complete control, coordinating directly with loyal commanders at Camp David and an undisclosed mobile command post believed to be operating from a massive refurbished Air Force stealth aircraft carrier. Insiders confirm that Trump is preparing for the final broadcast of the EBS, a series of classified revelations that will debunk the traditional narrative and expose the elite's clandestine operations globally. This includes video evidence of election interference comment notes housed in Frankfurt and Ukraine. The transmission will not just be an update, but an activation protocol. Once the EBS is launched, Lazarus redemption centers, quantum access cards, and funding mechanisms will be made public. It will be the largest wealth transfer in human history and will destroy the fiat economy in one fell swoop. The final chapter is already underway. The elite are watching their system implode. Their offshore accounts have been frozen, and their assets are being confiscated. A complete planetary awakening will follow. This is not simulation or a game. This is the final war for the future of Earth, and we are winning. Audits. The Fed audits and restructuring, threatening the fiat currency system that funds covert operations. I repeat the phrase. The Fed faces audits and restructuring, threatening the fiat currency system that funds covert operations. These measures weaken the economic influence of secret societies, forcing them to seek protections from allies like China. This financial restriction lays the groundwork for exposing their illicit wealth, a precursor to public disclosure. A Special Operation Command is conducting covert investigations into intelligence operatives linked to dark networks, suspected of orchestrating events. This realignment is crucial to ensuring the infrastructure necessary for public disclosure. This information war seeks to raise public awareness, creating demands for accountability through the courts. Pacification. Russia and Ukraine, all of this is in quote. I repeat it. Russia and Ukraine will immediately begin negotiations for a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. The terms for this will be negotiated between the two sides, as can only be possible, since they know details of a negotiation that no one else would know. The tone and the spirit of the conversation were excellent. President Trump declared on Truth Social after a private 2-hour call with President Putin. Ukraine and Russia will immediately begin negotiations toward a ceasefire and to end the war. Putin also confirmed that Russia is committed to a just solution to the conflict in Ukraine and agreed to work on a memorandum that includes a ceasefire, the principles of a settlement, and a timeline for signing a peace treaty. Russia wants to trade massively with the US when this massacre is over, and I agree, said Trump. Russia has an enormous opportunity to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. Its potential is unlimited, he added. Translation: the war economy has just been decapitated. Europe. Behind closed doors, Zelensky panicked. His job was to keep the war alive, keep Western money flowing, and keep the truth hidden. The war in Ukraine was about money, biological weapons, human trafficking, and unipolar control of the Davos Forum. European woke leaders are also disappointed with the pacification of Ukraine, and the EU will move forward with new sanctions against Russia without the US. The Vatican, too, has been under silent pressure since March 2025, when multiple sealed indictments were issued, linked to human trafficking networks and financial crimes in connection with Vatican bank accounts linked to Ukraine. Over the past 2 weeks, US units intercepted covered arms shipments disguised as humanitarian convoys, carrying prohibited cargo, including depleted uranium munitions and advanced electromagnetic pulse devices, intended to destabilize Russian infrastructure. That was the final straw. The next phase is simple. The truth will come out. Full thought summary. After some high-level negotiations in Switzerland with US representatives, the Chinese have decided to bankrupt the American corporation, according to Benjamin Fulford. The Chinese agreed to negotiate with Trump's representatives only after he promised to withdraw the massive tariffs he had imposed on China. This is because China refused to engage in dialogue and the threat. The decision of the Dragon family and others is that enough is enough. They say that the Chinese leaders sees no Chinese leader in singular sees no point in meeting with Trump until the undeclared cyber war underway in the West is over. However, the temporary removal of most sanctions does not negate the corporation's bankruptcy. The US needs to refinance more than $9.2 trillion in debt by December 31st, and Trump has tried various measures to address these bills. The Emir of Qatar announced that he would pay $200 billion for the deal for 160 Boeing aircraft, and that he would strengthen ties, but this would not be enough to end the bankruptcy. In a sign that it's over, Moody's has downgraded the US debt rating. In 1961, the year the US abandoned the gold standard, an estimated 13% of the adult population was overweight or obese. Today, that figure is 74%. Furthermore, the US lost its Protestant work ethic that made it strong in the first place. The US has repeated the history of the Roman Empire. Rome built its empire through military and administrative force. Then the Romans sat back and enjoyed the bread and circuses while the conquered nations paid tribute. The result was a decline similar to what we see now. As an example of this, the most popular career choice among the younger generation entering the workforce is to be a YouTuber or social media influencer. In contrast, young Chinese aspire to be engineers in high-tech companies. The manager of a major auto parts manufacturer says he has difficulty finding employees for his factories. Those he hires don't work hard and frequently resign. Inappropriate attire, excessive cell phone use, poor quality of work, and foul language are just some of the reasons why 65% of hiring managers were told to fire college graduates who had started their first job. Middle East. The UN wants that some 14,000 babies will die in Gaza in the next 2 days if supplies don't arrive. The UK, France and Canada promised retaliation against Israel for its intention to take Gaza. The European Union will receive the association agreement with Israel at the request of Spain and 16 other countries. The gold really unleashes a wealth boom in the most expected place. The value and the tax matters. China's growing trade surplus is fueling new concerns in Brussels. The EU risks becoming a dumping ground for cheap goods in the tariff confrontation between Washington and Beijing. Spain. Portugal has much more gold than Spain because Zapatero sold off the reserves to seek some profitability. Spain sees a mistake in setting a 5% spending percentage for NATO without discussing resources. The PSOE proposes regularizing illegal immigrants who arrived in Spain before December 31st, 2024. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.